Okay, my name is Marla Meyer. I'm the Accounting Career Advisor here at Washington State University, and I typically work with our on-campus students, but we've been having discussions that it would be wonderful if I could reach out to all of you and help you with any recruiting needs that you might have. So we wanted to start this out by having me do a presentation on some of the things that I work with our local students about, and then give you an opportunity. I'll give you some information on how you can reach me. And if you have any questions later on, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll do what I can to help you out. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Chrisi Kincaid, and I'm an academic coordinator for the Global Campus, and I also advise students in the College of Business and for data analytics, and the economic sciences degree. And I'm sitting in with Marla to see if there's any questions I can answer along the way that have anything to do with academics, but otherwise I'm going to turn it over to Marla.
So I took some students earlier this year over to Seattle, and this was just a little presentation of what we did. So if any of you ever want to participate in any of the tours that we do, let me know, and we can have you go around and tour firms as well. This particular tour predominantly went to accounting firms, but we also have included industry as well. So some questions that you need to ask yourself. Do you plan to take the CPA exam? So if you're going to work for a CPA firm, they pretty much all require that you pass the CPA exam. However, if you go into industry or if you go into government, some of those do not require the CPA exam. So you'll need to, talk to whoever you want to go to work for to find out if the exam is required. The reason that's important is that in the state of Washington, you need to have 150 hours. And that's why I mentioned that Texas, so Sally, you can't hear anything. Is that correct?
Might try checking your computer audio. Usually the sound is coming through your computer audio.
You can also try beginning.
Oh yeah, Thanks, Danica.
Thanks everyone for helping out. So as you network, as you start talking to companies you might want to work with, talk to them about whether the CPA exam is required. So for some of the other states, especially the person from Texas, if you're planning on going to work for a CPA firm, we should have a conversation after this at some point in time to talk about the CPA exam. Now, if you're going into industry, it's not quite so important, but Texas has got some very specific CPA exam requirements that the WSU program doesn't address all of those requirements, but I have found some online classes in Texas that will address the ones that the WSU program doesn't address. So we can talk about that kind of on the side. But the other states that I'm seeing, we should be good to go for all of the rest of you. So here's a timeline I put together. Maybe if you would each do me a little favor and type in if you're planning to work for a CPA firm or industry or government, or maybe just say, I don't know yet.
I do have a question. When you
Yes.
say going into industry, can you provide an example?
Of course. So when I say going into industry, I mean working for a company like Starbucks or Boeing or Alaska Airlines or PACCAR or Nike or So a company like that, that's what I mean by industry. So I hope that helps. All right, so perfect. So some of you are looking at industry, but you still want your CPA, so that's perfect. So a couple of government and a whole bunch of I don't know yet. So I'm gonna talk through this like you may be getting your CPA. Since many of you don't know yet, let's talk about that you're gonna get your CPA. So we have this 4-year track and the 5-year track. Now, to get 150 hours on the 4-year track, you would have had to have had a lot of running start credits, or be taking summer classes, or be getting a double major. On this 5-year track, you'll be looking at getting your regular accounting degree and then going on for a master's degree, or you'll be looking at getting a double major, or you'll be looking at getting a major with some minors to get the 150 hours.
And can I just jump in real quick?
Of course.
For lots of you transfer students, I just want to clarify that when Marla's talking about 150 hours, we're talking about 150 semester hours. And so there is a limit, and you can talk with your advisor about this. There's a limit to how much transfer work we can use for a WSU degree. There's 73 lower division hours that we can use towards a degree, and 90 total upper division and lower division credits combined. But a lot of transfer students that we see coming in have extra credit above and beyond that we just can't count towards the WSU degree. That credit that isn't counted towards the WSU degree can be counted towards your total hours for the CPA exam. So if you have questions about that, be sure to talk to your academic advisor and they can help you sort that out.
Absolutely. I see a question here that says, is there any downside to getting a CPA? I would say absolutely not. There is no downside. I think it's very important to have your CPA because the first job you get you may not need the CPA, but down the road, you might be looking at a job that does require a CPA. And the further you get away from the time that you're taking all these classes, the harder it is to go back and relearn how to study and get your CPA later on.
Does all college credit count towards the 150 hours?
Yes. Yeah. And we would, if some of it is in quarter credit, we would convert it. Mm-hmm.
So all those quarter credits get rounded down. So you need to take that into account too. So because most students tend to end up being on the 5-year track, I'm going to spend a little more time talking about this 5-year track. So as a freshman, and I'm going to call this a true freshman, somebody that's coming in straight out of high school, and as a sophomore, these are the 2 years that you're going to spend networking. Now, it may even be a little bit easier for you folks that are on the west side to get out and do some networking because all those firms that we have to drive from Pullman to Seattle to get to, they're right in your backyard. And I'm happy to, if you have somebody you're interested in talking to, I've got a lot of contacts in Seattle, and I would be happy to set you up with those contacts. You can make arrangements to go in and have coffee, have a casual conversation, and that's how you start networking. The more you get to know these people now, the easier it's going to be later on when you're actually starting to look for internships and for jobs. You already know somebody and they already know you. So it's going to be much more simple down the road to get help finding a job. We have this thing called summer leadership in accounting. And what summer leadership is they're a day, maybe 2 days, depending on the accounting firm. And this does apply to accounting firms now, where they bring you in and give you an introduction to their firm. And I kind of look at these as a day-long mutual interview. because you're getting a chance to look at them, look at the people that you'd be working with, and because they're bringing in a whole bunch of students all at once, you're also going to get a chance to look around the room and look at the people you might be colleagues with if you get a job with this firm. So typically what's happening this year is that if they're making you a summer leadership offer, a lot of the firms are also making you an internship offer. So that you might go to 3 summer leaderships because you might have 3 offers from 3 different firms. So you go to all their summer leadership opportunities, you get to know the firms more, and then at the end of the summer, you choose one of those 3 for your internship for the following summer. So you're already done, you've got your internship, and a lot of times that internship is going to lead to a full-time job offer. So getting involved in summer leadership is fairly important, and you want to do that early on. So if you're graduating in 2021 with your 5-year program, then this would have been your summer leadership year. Now, not to worry, there is still time to do fall recruiting for your internship for summer of 2020, and then still that will hopefully turn into a job in 2021. Now, I know all of you are not on a typical 5-year plan, so we can have a conversation about when would be the right time for you to start participating in this if you decide to go with an accounting firm.
Marla, can you talk a little bit to, for some of our students, if they're already working, let's say a full-time job and maybe caring for some kiddos outside of that, you know, just a busy life where they feel like maybe they can't step away from their job for an internship. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what things that they should be doing if they can't do an internship?
I would still say that networking is really critical, and maybe even more critical, because if working for an accounting firm is something that you want to do and you can't get away to do an internship, then you need to know these people and they need to understand your situation and how it's different from a typical college student who goes, you know, comes over to this campus and does a traditional college education. So again, I would be more than happy to help put people in touch with people. I have gotten pretty good at digging out opportunities. Some of my favorite places to look for opportunities that might not be the normal track. I really like Indeed.com. They tend to have employers in the Seattle area in particular post a lot of jobs there. I have found things in Central Washington as well. So for those of you, I think I saw that somebody's from Yakima. And of course I saw somebody is from Coeur d'Alene, so there are plenty of jobs around the Spokane area. I haven't looked in Coeur d'Alene yet. Don't know if you want to stay in Coeur d'Alene, but there's also opportunities in places like Boise, and you know, I can help search things out. So we have a question, what about working for government such as the IRS? What are the pros and cons? Any other suggestions for taxation? So any accounting firm is going to have a tax department. Typically, even the smallest firms start out with tax because everybody needs to have their taxes done. And then as an accounting firm grows, then they start adding things like audit. So we have lots of accounting firms that need loads of tax help. Taxes, most of the accounting firms have a harder time filling their tax jobs than their audit jobs. So if any of you are even remotely thinking about tax, really good way to go. As far as the government, I'm going to be addressing a little bit more about the government in a little bit. So if I can hold off on that one until I get to my kind of career areas. So let's move on here. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about CPA firms, and then I'm going to talk about government and industry. So let's start with audit versus tax. So why do CPA firms perform audits? What is this whole auditing thing even about? So the government requires publicly traded companies to have their financial statements audited so that people who are buying stock can trust that what the firms are telling people is true. Every now and then we have come across companies where the auditors haven't done their jobs and the companies have not been truthful. Some of you may know of a little company called Enron, where there was a little bit of fudging on financial statements, and the accounting firm that worked for them, Arthur Andersen, no longer exists. So that is an example of why ethics is so important and why the state of Texas in particular requires extra ethics classes that I kind of alluded to earlier. They have this special ethics class that those taking the Texas CPA exam have to have taken. So CPA firms audit financial statements, and they're trying to make sure that there's no material misrepresentation of data, or there are no errors that the company has made. And they also verify that any events that may have a negative impact on the company are disclosed. So say a company knows they're about to be purchased by another company. That could have an impact on stock prices. So, you know, that needs to be disclosed to people. There's a whole bunch of other events that need to be disclosed. For example, major lawsuits. Say there's a company that has had a big oil spill, and we all know that with a big oil spill comes lots of lawsuits. So that all needs to be disclosed. So what does a person do as an auditor? So under the supervision of a senior team member, a staff auditor performs the detail work of an audit. So some of that detail work includes, for example, if you go out and do an audit of a bank, or if you have a bank client, you go out and you get to walk into the bank at 5:05 when they're just closing, and you pull out your pencils or your computers these days and say, "Hi, we're here to do a cash count." And they have to lock down the bank. Everybody has to stay in place, and you start counting their cash. And fortunately, when I got to do this little event, it was a very small bank. So there wasn't a whole lot of cash in the safe. If you go in and do this with a big bank, that vault can be jam-packed, and you need a big team of people. So you actually go out for any kind of an audit. You do have to look at inventory to see if what they're saying is in their inventory is actually there. So I've had people tell me that they've gone into, for example, casinos at midnight on the 31st of January and done counts in casinos. I've had people tell me on the 31st, not January, excuse me, December year end, that they've been out on counts in, it was a lumber yard in Montana counting lumber. So those are some of the less glamorous jobs, but there's plenty of different things that you can do. And you're also verifying the financial information that people are presenting to you. So you're learning a lot about that in your classes. And at a CPA firm, when you start, they assume that you know absolutely nothing, and they will train you on everything you need to know. Having said that, the more you know about Excel and the more you know about data analytics, the easier this job is going to be for you, and the more highly sought after you're going to be. So those are good things to take extra classes on if you have the time. CPA firm working in tax. All national and state governments require the preparation of tax returns for individuals and business entities. Accounting firms make sure clients file returns and stay up to date on current tax requirements. And what will you do as a tax associate? You'll help prepare tax returns, research tax questions, and consult with clients on tax issues under the supervision of a senior or manager, a tax senior or manager. So the tax people earlier on in their careers tend to be a little more in the office. The audit staff tends to do a lot more travel. And when I say travel, it depends on how large the firm is. A lot of the big firms, the big four in downtown Seattle, they have so many clients in Seattle that travel means maybe walking down the block to work at an office down the block. So say a firm, downtown firm, does the audit for Amazon, they might have 6 blocks to walk. And they could be there for 6 months sitting at the Amazon offices rather than sitting in their own offices. So a lot of the firms have what they call hoteling. So you don't have your own confirmed desk. You go in and you reserve a desk like you would a hotel room. So you have a desk to work at for that particular week. The tax people tend to have their own desk that they go to on most days. They get to have their own plants, their photos, all of that kind of stuff around their desk. Whereas a lot of the audit people will have a little locker that they store stuff in, like their coffee cup, for the few, the once a month that they might be in the office. Excuse me. Corporate accounting, and this is where I get into the industry. So there's a lot of different avenues you can go into in corporate accounting. There's financial accounting and reporting. So with that, you perform detail work on general ledger and financial statements, financial analysis, and report preparation. In managerial accounting, you do cost analysis and report preparation. Tax accounting, you're preparing tax returns and doing various tax schedules. Internal audit, these are the kind of scary people for internal. You do compliance audits and test internal controls and information systems. And this kind of audit is done in part to get ready for the external auditors to come in and do their stuff. So you can work for very small firms, or you can work for very large firms like Amazon, Boeing, Starbucks, PACCAR, Weyerhaeuser. All of these firms do a lot of hiring of Washington State University students. So, okay, governmental accounting. So here's getting to your governmental question. There are lots of agencies that you can work for. The Department of Treasury, which one of its bureaus is the Internal Revenue Service, or the IRS, is one of those agencies, and they have 7 other bureaus besides the IRS. You can also work for the FBI. They just presented here on the Pullman campus this spring, and they are always looking for forensic accountants to go in and try to follow the money and track down the bad guys. The General Accounting Office, the FDIC, the SEC, the US Department of Defense, all have huge needs for hiring accountants. These people conduct independent audits for governmental agencies. They investigate white-collar crime, perform financial management research and analysis, and manage financial security. There's also quite a few jobs in state and local government. So you can work for the Washington State Department of Revenue, Washington State Auditor's Office, city governments, universities. And you can do things like perform audits for state agencies. You can do financial management research and analysis, and perform accounting functions for city governments and for universities, for example. Washington State University has a pretty large group of accounting people. So let's see, it looks like there's a couple questions that have popped up.
Does CPA firm work experience help land on corporate accounting job? I am a post-bac.
Yes, actually, it can help you. There are some firms that tend to hire out of, and this is particularly true for the big four accounting firms. Well, we consider the big five in Seattle because Moss Adams is so big in Seattle that within the Seattle market, they're as big as the big four. So a lot of firms like to hire. I'll give you an example of Starbucks. We had a WSU graduate that started at Deloitte, worked there for about 3.5 years, and then he transferred over to Starbucks at a much higher position than he might have been in now had he started right from the beginning with Starbucks. That doesn't make the career path necessarily any better, because working for a big four accounting firm, there are some benefits to it and there are some hardships to it. So you need to kind of take into consideration your own personal situation, excuse me, to determine what's the best route for you. So networking, the power of networking and why I should network. So what I saw many of you say when I asked, what do you think you're going to do with your degree? Many of you said, I don't know yet. So it's really important that you start to network, which will help you clarify what you want to do. So like I said, I can help put you in touch with firms, accounting firms, and I can help put you in touch with industry. And there are a few governmental agencies I can also put you in touch with. It's a great way to start preparing now for your future. It's a great way to meet new people who know other people. One of the best ways to find a job is you let people know what you're looking for, and they might know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. 6 degrees of separation, and boom, you've got a job. 60 to 80% of jobs are found through networking, not through looking on Indeed, not through, you know, looking in the newspaper, which is kind of old school anyway. But getting out, getting to know people, becoming a member of like the Washington CPA, the WSCPA. There's a student membership. I think it's $25 a semester, or maybe it's $25 a year. They have all kinds of networking events that they put on. They're actually headquartered in Bellevue, and they can help you find out about jobs. There's also a branch of that organization in Spokane. I'm sorry for the person that mentioned they're from Coeur d'Alene. And I would not be at all surprised if there is a similar organization in Oregon and in Texas for those of you who are in other states. So I can help you try to track those down as well. So did we have another question?
Yeah, what sort of part-time opportunities are out there?
During tax season, there tend to be a lot of opportunities. Now, as April 15th approaches, those are going to start slowing down. But a lot of firms hire part-time people during tax season to help them do all kinds of jobs to just help them get through tax season. So that's another thing. John, if you want to, I'm going to give out my email at the end of this. And if you want to reach out to me, we can maybe talk a little bit more about that one-to-one. Does that sound okay?
What scale of businesses use QuickBook?
Those are going to be pretty small businesses. A lot of the larger firms use larger, more complicated accounting packages. So they're going to obviously be willing to train you on those different packages. And there's myriad. number of different packages. So I don't know if you could even, you know, hope to learn all of them for trying to find a job beforehand. But just knowing how to use QuickBooks is going to give you a good start on figuring out how to use some other type of a program. So Jordan, are there any internships that I know of in the Tri-Cities? I do know that Moss Adams has internships in the Tri-Cities, and I do know that Clifton Larson Allen, CLA, has internships in the Tri-Cities. I just was talking to somebody yesterday, and I don't have contact information yet, but my understanding is that Hanford also has opportunities in the Tri-Cities area. So Jordan, if you want to reach out to me at the end of this, we can talk a little bit more about those opportunities as well. So in Dallas, Texas. So Dallas has a lot of opportunities. All of the big four are going to be there. Moss Adams is there. BDO, gosh, a lot of the top 20 firms are going to be there, Sally, in Dallas. So definitely for you, let's arrange to have a one-on-one conversation, and we can talk some more about all the opportunities there are in Dallas. Does that sound good? All right, thank you. So what I've posted here is a sample accounting resume. Just for those of you who don't know, and probably a lot of you don't, this name, Sue Bird, she actually happens to be a professional basketball player. So this resume was handed to me, and I've kind of tweaked it. It's a totally fake resume, but it does have some of the key things that you will need to have on your resumes. So with regard to your education, you want to put that you're from Washington State University. Now you might want to put that you're global campus, which will explain why you're not necessarily in Pullman. You will want to put your anticipated graduation date, because in particular, accounting firms need to know when you're planning to graduate. Your degree that you're getting is a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration, and you're going to get a major in accounting, and maybe you're going to do a double major in MIS, maybe in finance, maybe in something completely different. Maybe you're going to get a minor. We have students that have foreign languages as their second degree. We've got people with PR degrees. We've got all kinds of different degrees. You will need to put your GPA on your resume. Now, your GPA doesn't necessarily need to be your cumulative GPA. It could be your business school GPA. It could be your accounting GPA, but you will need to put it on your resume. And do we have a question?
Yes, we do. I have 20 years work experience, mostly office management. Do I still need an internship?
So that kind of depends. If you're thinking about moving into working for a CPA firm, it might be useful as a way to explore. I am going to go out on a limb here and guess that working for a CPA firm is maybe not where you're going to be heading. So if you're going to go into industry in some form, you don't need an internship. You've got lots of work experience, and now you're coming to them with a brand new degree, and they're going to take a look at that work experience and go, here's somebody that knows how to work. So that's great. And so you wouldn't need an internship at all. So Sally, you have a master's degree in Chinese language and literature. That's awesome. There are a whole lot of firms. We just had a company called Davita speak to our Beta Alpha Psi group yesterday, and they do a lot of kidney health. So they run a lot of dialysis. They work with a lot of medical facilities, and they have some of their own dialysis centers around the country. they're moving into a lot of foreign markets now, and China and Taiwan are some of those markets where Chinese language could be very valuable to them. So Yahoo, good for you. There are lots of opportunities with Chinese language, so that's a really good thing to have. Again, feel free to reach out to me directly, and maybe I can help steer you in the direction of some companies that I know that are working in China. We have another question. What are other great accounting programs in Oregon? How about Portland State U for somebody from Oregon? Are there differences for applying to a CPA between Oregon and Washington? Yes, there are some differences. Not a whole lot. You'll need to take a few more electives than somebody just taking the Washington CPA might need to. If you get a hold of me, I can direct you to where you can do some research on what you'll need to do for the CPA exam. And I also have some other accounting firms that are very Oregon specific that are in the Portland area. Our Vancouver campus has a lot of contacts that they're helping me out with, and I'm actually planning to go to Moss Adams Summer Leadership Program in Oregon this year, and I will also be going out and visiting with a whole bunch of firms in the Portland area. So I'll have more information after the end of May. So if you want to reach out to me, I do work 12 months a year. So feel free to reach out to me over the summer, and I can let you know what I've learned. If you're we'll be around the Portland area, maybe we can sit down and chat in person. Okay, so graduating in June, I've been working in an accounting department in a private real estate company for 6 years, where I had a perfect work-life balance. I do plan on taking the CPA exam next year, but I do not necessarily want to work for public accounting due to their long hours. Indeed. Do you have any suggestions for me so I can be certified? Let's say that without going. So pretty much every industry company out there appreciates you having a CPA license. A lot of them don't require it, but they love the fact that people have made the effort to take the CPA exam and pass it. So that's always great. Having that CPA is never going to hurt you. So that's always a good thing to have.
Is it required to be working under a CPA in order to get your 2,000-hour experience before sitting for the CPA? I'm thinking you're asking if you need to have another CPA that you're working with. Is that correct, Stormy? Can you clarify what you mean by working under a CPA? Do you mean working with somebody that already has the CPA, or do you mean working at a CPA firm? And while you type your answer, I'm going to move forward here because I still have quite a bit to get through. So anyway, here's this sample resume, and the 2 arrows denote some very accounting specific things that you need to include. When you're adding information about where you've worked, you want to make sure that you're talking about things, you know, you're trying to get an accounting job. So anytime you can throw in numbers, it's very useful. So say at this bartender's job that you were able to, you know, account for $5,000 per night from the till, then throw that kind of a number in there. Adding any kind of numbers. If you've done any training, if you've worked with customers, so say your only work experience is working for a McDonald's, accounting firms love that. Actually, everybody loves it because it means you've been able to work with customers, and you've probably had to work with some very difficult customers. So that's very important to people that
you know, they get to learn that you can work with any kind of people and that you've also had to work as part of a team. So we all know you go into a McDonald's and you look at all those people working behind the counter there. We all know that they are working as a team. They're not working as individuals because, you know, one person's not running back and cooking your hamburger. So they're communicating with each other. They're working as a team. They're having to coordinate all together. So putting that kind of information into your resume is very, very valuable. You want to make sure you include any volunteer experience you've done. If you haven't done any volunteer experience, I might suggest that you go out and start doing some volunteer experience to show that you're not just doing your schoolwork. Now, if you're raising a family, you might want to put something in here about, you know, that you are going to school part-time while you're, you know, holding down a job and raising a family. You know, communicate that information because firms appreciate the fact that you're going through a lot to try to get this degree. And then activities and awards are also very important. So I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in. So
yes. So beyond education, how much effort is typically involved in passing the CPA exam?
A lot. So there are multiple CPA review courses, and I can, if you again want to get hold of me, I can give you a link. I found a reasonably good website that kind of compares the different CPA review courses to each other. Now, if you go to work, for example, a lot of CPA firms and some of the larger companies, for example, maybe Weyerhaeuser, Boeing, some of those kind of companies actually have contracts with some of the CPA review courses, and they will pay for those either directly or they'll reimburse you as you pass parts of the exam. So it does take a lot of effort to pass the CPA exam. It's a very tough exam. There's 4 sections to the exam, and depending on the section that you're taking, I've seen first time pass rates between 50 and 60%. So you do need to do a lot of studying, and you do need to really have a plan, a study plan, especially if you've got a family or if you're working and going to school. You know, get your education done and then immediately start studying for the exam, because again, if it's all this information is fresh, it's going to be easier to pass the exam, but you will need to put in time. For our on-campus students, I tell them to try to take a light load their last semester here so that they can start studying, because the optimal is to try to take the exam between you know, starting your last semester, and then if you're starting a job in the fall, if you can get all of it done, great. But if you can at least get 2 or 3 parts knocked out so you're not having to do much more, then, you know, that's fabulous.
So we do have a lot of questions still coming in. Do you still have a lot of slides? Do you want to go through the slides?
Let me just race through the rest of my slides.
Okay, and then we'll answer all the questions.
And then we'll get back to these questions. So here's the sample cover letter I've included. What you want to do in your cover letter when you're writing to somebody is make sure you know who the person is. Hopefully you will have met that person. If you're out networking, you'll maybe have a chance to get to meet somebody. You want to name drop in this first paragraph. So maybe you met somebody through networking. You know, I met you over coffee and now I'm applying for your job, kind of a thing. You want to talk about, you know, things that you've done, how your experience is going to help them. You always want to look at their job description, because there may be specific questions in their job description that you need to answer. And if you, excuse me, if you don't answer their questions, you're automatically in the no pile, because you've just shown that you can't even be bothered to read their job description. Another photo. So I guess I didn't have that much more to go.
Okay.
So this is my email address, so please feel free to get hold of me via email. It's usually easier than trying to call me, but also you can reach me via Handshake. I am guessing that all of you are on Handshake. Is that true?
We offer it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're not on Handshake, I highly recommend you get signed up for Handshake because all kinds of job opportunities are on Handshake. So if you go on there and you want to make an appointment, just go on to appointments, go into the Carson College of Business. I'll answer your question about Handshake in a minute. Go in there, Carson College of Business, and then Accounting Career Advisor will pop up, and that's me. So yes, you can still access Handshake after graduating. You may need to switch over to a new email address because at some point your WSU one will shut down, but you can switch over. There is an alumni section, and we just had a long conversation this morning about how we're going to try to beef up our alumni participation in Handshake and have more firms post jobs for not just entry level, but for jobs maybe after you've been out in working for a couple of years. So Danica, Handshake is the WSU kind of job opportunity website. It's handshake.com, and you should be able to just go on there and sign up as a WSU a student. Yeah. So now let's go back and try to catch up on some of these.
So I'm going to ask too, because after Stormy asked her question, then someone else said, well, that's my question as well. So I'm going to kind of do two. Are you required to work at a company that has a CPA in the office, or just a company that has an accounting department? And then do you want me to?
So I might need to do a little more research on that question. I believe you just need somebody that has an accounting department. I am not aware that you have to have a CPA in the firm. I haven't heard that. I have not heard that. So I think you just need to be working in accounting and getting accounting experience. One thing I do want to point out that if you guys are going to all the effort to get a 4-year degree, if you start seeing jobs that say things like bookkeeping, that is not the kind of job you want to be looking for. Your education is putting you at a much higher level than a bookkeeper. So just keep that in mind as you're looking for work.
Okay, and then there is 2,000 hours, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, there is 2,000 hours work experience working under certified US CPA required to become a CPA in Washington. My current job, 6 years in accounting, is not going to meet this as there is not much tax work I can do here. Easiest and most recommended way to get this 2,000 hours checked is, I believe, to work for public accounting, which I do not want to do. So I was wondering if I can fulfill this work experience requirement without doing public accounting.
I know you can, because there are a lot of people who have CPAs that have never worked for a public accounting firm. What I would like for you to do is send me an email with this question and let me do some more research, and so I can give you a more thorough answer to that question.
And then what is the website that compares the CPA review programs?
I don't have that with me right now, so if you would send me an email, I can send you a link to that website.
I think you're going to have a lot of emails after
I
this.
think I am too.
Do CPA firms value/consider a student's GPA for accounting classes when they're looking for interns and job applicants?
Yes, they do. Pretty much the minimum GPA you're going to need to have to work for a CPA firm is a 3.0. As I look through all of the postings of jobs for the firms that I work with, when they post their jobs on Handshakes, the lowest GPA I've seen is a 3.0. Now, I have had firms tell me that they will look at a student that has slightly less than a 3.0 if there is a reason for that. So in your cover letter, you can sometimes explain that. For example, I had a student who's a little lower than a 3.0 overall GPA, but their accounting GPA is quite a bit higher, and it's increasing as they go through their classes. And that's because they started out in a major that was totally wrong for them. They had a real struggle, had some really poor grades. Now that they've switched over to an accounting major, their grades are just shooting up, and accounting firms are totally willing to take a look at that. So if your grades are improving because of something, we've had students that have had health issues, they've had problems where they've had a death in the family and they've had a lot of, struggle dealing with that, and their grades dropped for a semester. So as long as they're seeing an upward trajectory of grades, they're more than happy to take that into consideration.
And then thank you, Rebecca, for including the Handshake website. And then Sally says you can find it on Washington State Accountancy Board about the working experience.
Oh, thank you, Sally. That's great.
And then how are you supposed to record the 2,000 hours?
I think I would refer you back to the Washington State Accountancy
Very
Board
good.
to answer that as well.
And just for everyone to know, I know, Sally, you're in Texas and things. If folks are in different states, the best thing you can do is go look out at the State Board of Accountancy website for your state, especially if you're going to sit for the CPA exam in a state different from Washington State. When the curriculum was designed for this accounting major, it was designed to fulfill the education requirements for the Washington State Board of Accountancy, so students would be prepared to sit for the CPA exam if that's what they decided to do. In general, I see, in looking at State Board of Accountancies for lots of different states, the requirements are often very similar or the same, but there's particularities in different states. So do spend some time, if you're not going to sit for the CPA exam in Washington State, to go out and seek out your State Board of Accountancy website.
Which
I'm just
which
gonna,
goes with Sally's question.
yeah,
Yes.
will it be okay? So Sally, if you sit for the CPA test in Washington, that is fine, and you can actually take it, but you should also be planning to work in Washington. So if you're planning to work in Texas, you're going to want to look at the Texas requirements. And there are some, like I mentioned earlier, there are some very specific requirements for Texas. And there is at least one class that pretty much anybody wanting to work in the state of Texas and get their CPA license in Texas has to take this particular ethics class. But there are multiple universities in the state that offer it, including online. So there are definitely ways to deal with it. You might have to take a couple of extra classes from a Texas university, but it shouldn't be that difficult to do.
If I plan to block a whole year only for preparing for CPA test next year, can I apply for it in June this year before I graduate? And then when should I start to buy the CPA review courses and start to prepare?
So what I suggest you do is, okay, fine, block the whole year, but you want to study for one part of the exam at a time. And I can put you in touch because it'd probably be easier for you to look at it online. But I know that Becker has a really good explanation of how to go about preparing and taking the exam. So you want to prepare for, it's 4 sections plus the ethics exam, and you want to do a section at a time. So you don't study for the whole test and then take it all at once. You study for one section and take that part, and then you study and hopefully pass it. And then you study for the next section and hopefully pass that one, and then you just go through it a section at a time until you've got the whole thing passed.
And the last question.
So I believe Washington and Idaho reciprocity is actually quite simple, much more simple than between some other states. Again, if you go on to your state's state accountancy board, there typically is a list on those state websites about who they have reciprocity with. So go and take a look at that.
How long does it usually take for someone to do the CPA exam in terms of months?
So there is no usual, because I have heard of people that, and I don't want this to sound negative because this is a rare case, but I have heard of someone who has taken 5 years to try to get through the exam. Other people pass every single section on the first go round, and that might take, I'm gonna just say 6 months. So it just takes a variety of lengths of time depending on how fast you want to do it, and you know, all that kind of thing. So can you pay for the exams?
For the CPA exam, you said prepare for each section one at a time. Can we pay for the exam separately or less? And how often can we take the exam?
So there's a whole list of rules. Again, probably the best thing is to send me an email, and I can get you information for all of the CPA review courses, and they can then give you a lot of detailed information about their plans, their timing, all of that kind of information to help you get through that exam.
And for those of you who are really seriously considering the CPA exam now, and you're thinking too that you may not have enough credits to sit for the CPA exam, be sure to reach out to your advisor. There's options to do a double major, like for instance an MIS, which looks really, really good on a resume. And that would require an additional 15 credits or 5 classes in MIS. There's various minors that could be included, but if you're going to do a minor that takes 18 credits, you might as well do the extra major in MIS, for instance, because I think that would take you further. So be sure, if you have questions about how many credits you have and where you stand, be sure to reach out to your advisor.
Yes, Audrey, that's true. Your anthropology degree will have some value.
Story wants to know if you have a link for the summer leadership that you mentioned earlier.
So there is not one summer leadership. Every accounting firm, all of the major accounting firms have summer leadership programs. There are some, Stormy, I can't remember where you're from, but there are still multiple summer leadership opportunities that I'm aware of in the Seattle area. If you're not from that area, reach out to me and maybe I can see if there's something still open for this coming summer in your area. So thank you everybody for joining in. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help you folks as well as the people here on the Pullman campus. And I hope that some of this information will be of use to you.
Thanks everyone.